Rick Thompson. I'm on the board of directors of Michigan NORML and on the board of directors of MI Legalize, and I'm the 5th Congressional District Representative on the Michigan Democratic Party for the Cannabis Caucus. Oh, I do know Earl personally. I consider Earl a friend. When you talk about Earl Carruthers, you're talking about a man who's achieved a state of calm that most of us could only, aspire to. So when you hear about how a person who's that centered and that positive getting thrown into a system that's designed for drug dealers and rapists and things, it staggers your mind. When you hear the story of Earl Carruthers, when you hear what he went through and then how it resolved, I think it should inspire people to want to stay involved in the news cycle, to learn more about the stories that they see.
My name is Jamie Lowell, and shortly after the passage of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, myself and a few people co-founded the first locally licensed dispensary in the state, which is still in operation with a application in for state licensing at the moment. I've been involved in advocacy, activism, and business for the last 10 years in this area. I was one of the co-authors of the legalization bill and continue to try to find out different ways of fitting in this emerging industry and continue to try to make the laws a little bit less prohibitive and implemented a little bit better than the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act was. Well, I've known him for a while through the cannabis world and his unfortunate circumstances with law enforcement, and a little bit before, because I also was part of starting the first Cannabis Industry Association, and he joined that early on, but shortly thereafter he ran to the issues with the law enforcement in his case, and but always viewed him as very smart, very above board, trying to do things in a professional manner, something that would be good to demonstrate to those who are making decisions on a regulated market or something like that, is because we began doing this just from local authority or just from interpreting the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act in a particular way before there were some judgments about it.
My name is Deborah Young. I'm a cannabis activist. I've been doing this for 6 or 7 years. I led a bunch of local campaigns. We did local cities where we legalized marijuana, local cities, kind of softening up the electorate for the statewide proposal where we legalized recreational marijuana. Earl is a test case, and everybody knows the name Carruthers. They all know this name. I actually know Earl, so it's more than just a name. It's somebody personal to me. And this is the face of it, and this is what we have to change, because this can affect somebody's life forever, and there's a lot of people this has affected their life forever. Earl's been in this for more than 10 years, his case has been going on. Can you imagine the type of stress, what goes on in your mind? 10 years of legalities and in and out of courts, and we need to clean that up. People need to be able to sleep at night and not worry about this kind of thing.
My name is Michael Komorn. I'm the founder of Komorn Law PLC here in Farmington Hills. Practicing law for about 25 years, mostly in criminal defense, but say over the last 10 to 12 years, primarily cannabis law, which includes criminal defense and compliance counseling and entity setups and business advice and things like that, as we've gotten now into the licensing of marijuana businesses in Michigan. I got involved with Earl's case because his case was kind of a historic case in Michigan when it happened, and I had kind of inserted myself into the middle of the developing medical marijuana laws and was taking on a lot of cases, and I just wanted to be involved. And I may have met him other places. Early on, when the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act passed, there was gatherings and Compassion Club things, and I'd go speak at libraries, and he may even had me come speak at one of his clubs, so I kind of knew who he was. And I knew about his case going on. But the real tragedy of what had happened was when, after he lost at the trial level, the court made an opinion. He appealed at the trial level and went to the Court of Appeals, and they wrote the Brownie case opinion, which he may have spoken to you about. But it was one of the worst opinions that I think has ever been written, and some really crazy, irrational use of the English language to try to describe the conclusion that they came to. But I and a couple other lawyers got involved at that point, appealing that decision from the Court of Appeals to the Supreme Court. Well, at the time that his case came out, it was, we were learning what the bottom line was for the behavior associated with medical marijuana. And you wouldn't think it would go this way, but what happens is the ballot initiative was passed, 3.3 million people voted for the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. A law gets written, it's approved by the legislature, and it gets enacted into law. You read the law, you think you know what it says. You think you know what it protects. You think you know who is immune from behavior that would otherwise be illegal, that being involved with marijuana. And despite all that, people are still getting arrested.
So a lot of people were given charges or facing law enforcement situations they never deserved. And it wasn't because they were doing things actively that they knew to be incorrect. It was because the interpretation of law was just so in flux at the moment.
So by making it legal and taking it away as a source or a tool for police enforcement to focus on, we begin to help a little bit with making it a little bit harder for there to be that type of social control, that type of cheap and easy investigation to get somebody behind bars and to take all their items of value and that type of thing. So we need to do more reform in all those areas, but getting cannabis legalized and eliminating probable cause for smelling something or seeing a stem lying around or something like that is a great start to all that.
And his case comes out, which is just terrible. Like you have to smoke. Did the 3.3 million people really think that the law protected only smoking and kids could? But then you have the lab getting involved and just manipulating this from a bad opinion that said it's a marijuana brownie. He just doesn't get immunity. That's what they turn it into, these are THC laced brownies, not from a marijuana plant. This is like the most bizarre step that the institutions of so-called justice took this, okay? So Earl's case has that flavor to it as well, which in that I guess it was his case that inspired this gathering and conspiring to create false reporting of marijuana brownies. So Earl's case, emblematic because its impact for his own, the impact on himself and not being able to present or have immunity from the prosecution and having to defend himself, and also the impact that it had on everybody else in the state of Michigan. If you don't know and he didn't explain it, I would say that Earl's case stands for the proposition that, and it was unknown at the time until the Court of Appeals ruled, but they ultimately said that the only marijuana that you can possess in Michigan under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act was the dried plant material associated with the marijuana plant. That's it. And in Earl's circumstance, he was charged with possessing marijuana brownies. They call them marijuana brownies or whatever. They know they're marijuana brownies. But in this opinion that, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but they use the language of the highly potent but unmeasurable brownies. Highly potent, unmeasurable. You can't have those two things within the same. And that was the sentiment of this opinion.
Hi, my name's Steve Miller. I'm a retired police officer. I retired as a sergeant with the Canton Township Police Department. I also served there as a SWAT officer and a detective. Prior to that, I worked for the City of Milan Police Department for 2 years. And before that, I was in the United States Air Force Security Police. The war on drugs has obviously shown to be disproportionately affect people of color. And that is indicated by the number of people of color that are in our prison system currently. So when I first started in police work, there was a huge focus on us now that I look back at it now, with the perspective I have now about the war on drugs, looking back when I was coming up and being trained as a police officer, that we were really geared and trained to fighting the war on drugs. When we made traffic stops, we were told, and this was from the academy to our training officers on the street and everything, we need to know the uniform traffic code, not for the safety of the motoring public, but in order to stop cars. And then the next step is we were always taught to always look for a reason to get in that car, to search the car, and to find drugs. Everything we did what you would think would normally be for traffic safety, which I do feel is important. I do think we do need police out there enforcing traffic laws and traffic safety. That is of importance and concern in our society, I think. But it became more than about traffic safety. As a police officer coming up in the 90s and 2000s, it was a very adversarial relationship with the public that the police had with the public, because our order was to shake people down, try and get drugs off the street, most of which was marijuana, and forfeit people's property. You know, take their cars, take their money. And that was the priority. And I think it still is a large part of the priority of the criminal justice system today. As a police officer, marijuana, I never responded to one incident in which marijuana was the underlying factor causing the problem, or the incident in which we were there responding to try and get under control.
The point is, this can happen to anybody.
Exactly.
And when you meet Earl, and he's so sincere, and I got to tell you that if this had happened to me, there is no way that I would be enduring this with the kind of grace and patience that he does, because he is. He's just the nicest guy, and for something like this to happen to such a nice person like this, it's horrible. It really is. It's horrible.
Our operation, because it was in Washtenaw County and has a prosecutor who didn't want to make a huge issue out of it, we didn't run into too many problems. But Earl in Oakland County was in a place where they did want to focus and target that type of activity, and so we got caught up in that. And we've always been in support of people who have to deal with that, because it could happen to any one of us. I mean, we were fortunate, but it's been a reality, and that's been a risk throughout this entire adventure. And so we understand that that Earl has a lot of courage to stand up to the system and to fight it through so hard and for so long.
The Brownie case, procedurally, is at a place right now in April of 2019 that you will not find another criminal defense lawyer that can tell you that they have a similar case that's like this. The procedural place that it's in is literally like an anomaly. You ask the question of plea. There's no plea. People don't usually hire me to plea. People hire me to take on the broken criminal justice system because it's really broken, and walking in and doing a plea is not usually why they are hiring me. It's so big and so powerful, and they've become this way, I would suggest, by marijuana and the prohibitions related to marijuana. Statistically, in Michigan, if you went around any courtroom on any given day before legalization, you would find 40% of the docket were marijuana cases. We know that the Michigan State Police Forensic Science Division reported that 40% of its budget, 2013, 14, 15, all the way up to legalization, was spent testing marijuana products. They would tell you that the reason that the rape kits, Michigan has this terrible backlog of rape kits not getting tested by the Forensic Science Division, they would tell you themselves that if you're spending 40% of your budget testing marijuana, do I need to say the next thing? The reason that the rape kits aren't gotten to is because we're spending 40% of our budget testing marijuana. This is the state of the affairs, all the way up until legalization. Now, is there an explanation for that? Is there any logic or reason? Is there something to boast about that, 80%, that like the marijuana convictions are 80%, make up 80% in Michigan, or 20,000 people are arrested and convicted in Michigan every year for marijuana? But this is what it has been. How about this? That since 2008, 2009, since the MMA passed, forfeiture in Michigan hit a peak in 2012-13, $25 million a year. That's of what was reported. Probably a lot more that wasn't reported. The Michigan State Police makes a lot of money every year in forfeiture. And when the MMA was passed, and these individuals who happen to own things because they're patients and caregivers and are not, they've lived, they've worked, they're associated, whatever they're doing, they've acquired things. When they find themselves in a technical violation under the MMA and you're not protected by the act, they are taking everything. This is not just things I'm saying. This is well documented over the last 10 years. It was the medical marijuana that brought this to my attention, because I saw the way these individuals were just being sucked in and forfeited and overcharged and technical violated. No one cared. Like there's a difference of a culpability of mens rea, how people are thinking of intending to commit a crime, whether it's accidental, or whether even the law is so clear and so well written that it's unequivocal and there should be no debate in terms of the interpretation. Certainly way too much emphasis on, prosecuting for profit and, arresting for profit, and how the system becomes a method by which cities and townships and counties get revenue. That's a fact. That's been the most disturbing. Remnants of the Carruthers case that defined unusable marijuana as not counting towards your 2.5 because it's illegal to possess, even though the amendments cured all that, that little nuance still remains. Therefore, if you're possessing any wet marijuana at all, it is illegal. But anyways, the point is, this is a battle that goes on. They want words to have meaning, read the statute as it applies, but instead we have judges creating concepts and words to actually thwart the intention of the law.
With people who are willing to be sensible about the issue and willing to allow things to go on as intended, we can get there. The problem has been we've had leadership in place that have obstructed the ability for the laws to be implemented kind of as intended and to let people be protected. Police then can focus their time and energy and resources on things that may be more detrimental to society. Violent crimes, obviously, and other issues.
The story of Earl Carruthers is a story of a guy who was unfortunately made a victim of the system, but chose to set an example for others to follow. So I hope people are inspired by Earl's story. As inspirational as Earl himself is in person, I hope that we're able to capture the essence of what it means to be a fighter and what it means to have like a higher purpose, a holy calling, the feel that you're accomplishing something for the betterment of everybody, not just for yourself. And if people can gain that confidence by listening to Earl's story, then I think it was worth the telling.